Hello everyone, this is Lisa with Old Orchid Yarnery. I'm here to show you a quick tutorial on how to add beads to your knitting. It's part of our Building with Lace class that we're doing now in 2024. We meet once a month and we're doing a new section of lace every month, and section 5 included beads. So first I will show you what the finished section looks like. Let me get this out here. Here is section 5. I've already started 6, so let me cover that up. So here's section 5. And you can see that it's got these beautiful motifs going up. And in the center of each of these motifs, you've got 4 beads. I don't know if you can see that. I'm hoping you can. 4 beads. So we're placing a total of, I believe, 28 beads in this section. Yes, 7 motifs, and they each have 4 beads. If you'll notice, the pattern calls for several hundred beads, and that's because there are a lot of them in the borders that we're going to put on at the end. But this is the only beading section, I believe, in the body of the project. So I'm going to show you on a swatch how to put those beads on. Now there's several ways to do beads. You can use a very small crochet hook, usually a stainless steel with a tiny little head. The problem with that is that sometimes you have trouble getting the head of the crochet hook through the head of the beads. Sorry for all that noise. These are the beads that I've chosen to use. The pattern calls for number 6 beads. Because of the nature of beads and how they're manufactured, you don't know that the center is always going to be exactly uniform. So you might get a small enough crochet hook that will fit some of your beads, but maybe you'll come across some that it doesn't. Now that might not be a problem for you. You can just discard that bead or set it aside to use in another project and find another one that does fit your crochet hook. But my preferred method uses something that is not knitting related at all. It's Oral-B Super Floss. And these are pieces of dental floss, individual pre-cut strands, very inexpensive. You can find them at a grocery store. That's where I bought these, probably CVS or Walgreens, something like that. So let me show you how I use them. They come in, these I just have in a little baggie because I took some out already, but let me show you the best I can. Move this book so we have a dark background behind us. This is a piece of Super Floss. There we go. You'll see it's got this real fuzzy part right here. And on the one end, it's a more firm end. And that's what I'm going to use to pick up my beads. Then you've got this fuzzy end that theoretically you could use to hold a number of beads on while you're working on your project. I found that to be problematic. They tend to fall off. So I just use one bead at a time. And then you've got all this other floss that would be used if you were actually using this as floss. I usually just cut that off because you don't need all that. You can leave it there if you want to. All right, let me get out a couple beads here and I will show you. Now the best thing to do I've found, of course I don't have one here with me, is to get a little dish or a plate and empty some beads onto it, because that will be the easiest way to pick them up. For our purposes today, because I'm not prepared with that, I'm just going to use this bag. And here is my swatch that I have been using for various parts of the class. So I'm not going to do the pattern. The pattern in section 5 is fairly straightforward. No stitches that are new to you. You should have seen them already before. Really the only new thing in this one is placing the beads. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate here today. Now let me just knit a stitch or two to get away from the edge. All right, now say I want to place a bead right here. And this doesn't matter if you're knitting continental style or English style. You'll knit up to the place where you want to place the bead. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Super Floss with the firm end. There we go. And I'm going to pick up a bead. So I'm just going to put that in there, pick up a bead. Easier to do when you're trying to do it in front of a camera, I think. Okay, so I've picked up one bead with my Super Floss, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert that into my stitch, put my Super Floss right into my stitch purlwise, like this. You can see that, I hope. And now I'm going to come back with the end on the other side. So I'm outside of my stitch now, and I'm going to come back through the center of the bead with the Super Floss. It'll be more clear in just a moment. This really is very easy to do. I'm making it look much more complicated than it is. So what I end up with is I've put my super floss through the stitch, I've looped the end around, and I've gone through my bead. Oh, and now I've dropped my knit stitches off the end. Just a moment, nothing to fear. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull my super floss up and I'm going to lift that stitch off my needle. No fear, it's not going to go anywhere. My floss is holding it. And now I'm going to push, see if I can demonstrate this properly. I'm going to push this bead down so that it goes onto my stitch. Hopefully you can see that. And then I'm just going to put my needle back in and remove my floss. So there's my bead right on my stitch. And now I'm just going to knit that stitch. You would then work the stitch as indicated in the pattern. This pattern says that all the bead stitches are knit. So there we have that bead nicely placed. What I like about placing beads this way on the actual neck of the stitch, if you will, is that you can see it on both sides. It's not like you have a good side of the bead and a wrong side of the bead. Let me do another one. So let me just knit a couple of stitches. See if I can do it a little less awkwardly for you this time. Now I'm going to get my super floss, the firm end. The rest of it I'm just ignoring. You can cut that off if you want to. Really all I need is this firm end. And I've now picked up my bead with the super floss. And I'm going to thread the super floss through my stitch where I want to place the bead, purlwise. And then I'm just going to come back with the end of my super floss and go through the bead, like that. So now I have my bead and my super floss, my stitch on my needle. I'm going to let the stitch off the needle, and now I'm going to pull that bead down so it's on my stitch. And then I'm just going to put that stitch back on the needle, pull out my super floss, and work my stitch as normal. In this pattern, it calls for knitting. Might feel a little hard to get that needle in there because the bead's taking up some space, but don't worry about it. Just get it in there and go ahead and knit, and there you have your bead. Let me do it one more time. So I'm gonna knit a couple stitches. This is where I'm gonna place my bead. So once again, we're gonna get that super floss, the little firm end. We're gonna pick up a bead, just like that. I'm going to put the end of the super floss through my stitch where I want to place the bead, purlwise. Bring the end of that super floss back around, put it back through the bead. So here I have my bead on my super floss going through my stitch. I'm going to pull that stitch off the needle, move the bead down onto the stitch, and put the stitch back on the needle, and remove the super floss. And now I'm just going to work that stitch as normal. Let me just knit to the end here so I can show you the 3 beads I placed on this little swatch. So now you can see there's the 3 beads that I placed. You can see them from both sides of the work, which is kind of nice if you're going to wear this as a shawl, because then if it flips around a little bit, you'll still have that little bit of shiny bead. And I hope that helps. I think you'll really enjoy it. Maybe you'll find that you want to add beads in other projects for knitting. It's pretty fun to do, and it just adds a little something. All right, happy knitting, and be sure, as always, to ask me or send me an email if you have any questions or problems. I look forward to seeing you next time.